What's going on, everyone? Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you're joining us from. Welcome to another AWS Power Hour Cloud Practitioner. My name is Aaron Hunter. I'm a senior technical trainer with AWS Training and Certification based out of Frisco, Texas. And with me, we have my buddy Matt. How's it going, Matt?
It's going well, Aaron. I'm Matt Heffernan. I'm a senior technical trainer out of Central Colorado, but I'm actually in Anaheim right now from a hotel room.
Why are you in Anaheim, Matt? What's going on?
Well, AWS had a summit yesterday for local customers to come in, look at the technologies that we have, meet with some of our partners, and I was asked to come out here and help with the labs. We had a whole room set up where customers could come in and play around with labs. Morning, it was
That's so cool.
self-paced. Yeah, it was. It was a lot of fun. It was my first time doing it.
That's really cool. I've gone to a couple summits this year, and I'm actually curious. Hey, everyone who's watching, have you been to an AWS summit? And if so, which one? Or maybe if you haven't, maybe you're planning to go. Let us know in the chat. And if you can't chat, make sure to sign up, sign into Twitch, give us a follow while you're there, and join the conversation live. So, Matt, today we're going to cover Cloud Practitioner. I think we
Yes.
have security and compliance for today's episode. Let me go ahead and pull that up. Give me a second here. And here we go. All right. So, again, for those who just joined, my name is Aaron Hunter, Senior Technical Trainer with AWS Training Certification. Matt Heffernan, also one of my peers and colleagues and good buddies. We haven't met each other in person, but hey, we're here together, and he's
That's
down there now. All right. So today we're going to cover security and compliance. Oh my gosh, one second. Got to clearly have not spoken enough this morning. But here today we're going to cover security and compliance, and we're going to cover about IAM and account security and the account root user and shared responsibility models and all that kind of stuff. So let's go ahead and pull up today's episode. Give me a second here. And if you don't know how to get there, you can actually just go to awspowerhour.com. That will take you directly to the AWS Training and Certification Twitch page, which I have pulled up right here. So from there, we can see that we have our current show. We're going to have 6 episodes in total. This is episode number 2. And if you want to watch any of the previous episodes or series, you can view those on demand by scrolling down further on the page. But let's go ahead and talk about today's episode and the rest of this series. So you can click on Learn More. That'll pull up the page. It'll show it for you and everyone. By the way, this episode and this entire series is part of the Get Certified Challenge. So sign up, register for the certification challenge, and as part of that, you get a 50% off voucher for the exam, the Cloud Practitioner exam. So really cool. Save some money. I mean, I'm all about saving money.
yes.
um,
Can we share that link with the student?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We'll get that link in the chat for you. By the way, we do have chat moderators here to help. So ask your questions, do whatever you can to make this learning important to you. And yeah, let's go ahead and move on. Okay, so here what we can see is episode 1. You can watch last week's episode on demand. On demand, in case you missed it. Hopefully you didn't. But if you're here today, that means you probably carried over from last week, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week as well. This week's episode, we have security and compliance. So during the second episode, we're going to expand on what we talked about last week, and we're going to discuss security and compliance concepts, starting with a shared responsibility model. We'll address which of the services can help you secure your account. And then we have 5 more episodes, well, 4 more after this one. So next week is network and compute services, storage and database services, cost efficiency and pricing models, and finally a review and a little mini exam prep that Matt and I have built out for you. So that should be fun. I think we have a poll, don't we, Matt?
Yes, we do.
Let's go ahead and jump over to that poll. So for those who are new here, we have our first poll. Go ahead and use the chat, please do. How many episodes have you watched? One, or maybe this is your first episode. Go ahead and let us know in the chat, and we will monitor that. Let me pull up the chat on my end. I see some people saying 111, which means they're coming back. I see one person said 2. Welcome to the show. Really love it. Love it, love it, love it. Love what I'm seeing there. One person said 2 as well. Okay. One person said they signed up, but they haven't received the discount code. It could take a couple days, could take up to a week, so give it some more time.
Did you
I'm
also
on.
see we had requests for bad jokes again, and
Oh,
we
I
already
didn't
had
see
one
that.
in there? Oh
I
boy.
Do you have
Do you
any
know?
lined up?
Well, actually, Thomas, one of our moderators, put one in the chat, and he said, when you go to at the gas station, the air to inflate your tire used to be free, but now it's $1.50. And do you know why?
Inflation.
Yeah, yeah.
Oh,
So,
that is. I don't know if it's terrible or if it's just amazing, but I can tell you one thing: it's full of air.
yeah.
Going
Hot
back
air.
through maybe hot air, depending. We're
Maybe, I
we're in
don't know.
summer in the northern hemisphere here,
Yes.
but I can also see that we have some people saying yesterday's Anaheim summit was awesome. That's amazing. That is simply amazing. All right. Hopefully, everyone has enjoyed the last week's episode. If this is your first time here, welcome. We do appreciate you. Let's go ahead and move on. We do have, let's pull the slide back up. We have homework from last week. Hopefully, you did the homework. Hey, Matt, there's something different about this slide from last week, isn't there?
Oh, that's okay. Go ahead, point it out. That's I shrunk my LinkedIn handle.
Yeah, yeah. So Matt had a really long LinkedIn handle. It was right here, and it went all the way
Oh,
over to here. And I feel like it kind of went off the screen a little bit, but it's much better now. So for those of you who are trying to tag Matt and maybe you couldn't because you couldn't memorize exactly what his handle was, he made it easier for you. So it's MH Hefe.
yeah, remember it was not Matthew Heffernan 8675309. So do
No,
you
that's
remember
someone
the
else's.
music video? So
That's
yeah,
someone else's phone number.
yeah.
All right. Last week's homework, we asked you to go through the Cloud Essentials Ramp Up Guide to complete and share your favorite learning resource on LinkedIn. And we did have someone go out and do that. So, John here said, hey, my favorite portion of the learning resources is Amazon Builder's Library and the Introduction to Deep Learning. So, John, thanks for doing that. Let us know if you're here in the chat. And, hey, this actually just goes to show that we have a lot of resources, not just for Cloud Practitioner. So as you continue your journey, as you complete your journey to become Cloud Practitioner certified, you can continue learning by using these resources. So bravo to you, John. Thanks for jumping in. And as you can see, I did get out there and I liked it. So appreciate that. All right, moving back over to Matt and handing the things over to him. He's going to start walking us through the wonderful world of security and compliance for Cloud Practitioner.
Awesome. So I'm going to go ahead and we've got a blank screen there, but now we'll come up. Here is the ramp up guide. It's if someone was wanting to see from last week, this was your assigned homework, and it was actually this specific guide. So just as a refresher, I hope you're okay with that, Aaron, just before we jump in.
Absolutely, of course. I love this. I love refreshers.
Awesome. So we'll go ahead and I'll pop that in the chat. All right. And there is the link to that guide. A great way to go ahead and study and then refresh. What I love about the ramp up guides is it breaks things down. And so you could say, well, there's a specific area and I need to go ahead and I want to learn. You know what? I will say one thing about yesterday's summit. In the afternoon, they brought in some AWS trainers, and they went over things like API Gateway, Lambda, and they walked through the labs with students. So we had a full room of customers, and they walked through. And I teach those subjects, but I got to see somebody else teach it, and I learned new things and things I'll be able to bring back to the classroom.
What did
And
you
so
learn?
we spent a lot of time breaking down the Lambda function. Lambda is serverless compute, and we're going to cover compute next week. So this is kind of a hey, come back and see us. and one of the things, it was just the way
Come
that
back and
break
see
it
us,
down.
please. Please, we want you to come back.
Well, I need this job. I really do. But it's really interesting to see how people, different people explain things differently, and that perspective is really what makes it so rich in learning. So awesome. All right. Let's go ahead. Use those ramp up guides. They have them for, it's not just for Cloud Essentials too. So as you progress in your career, as you learn more about AWS, come back to those ramp up guides. They cover a lot of different subjects, and it doesn't necessarily always relate to one of our certifications. It can be IoT. It could be gaming. So if you want to build games in AWS, they actually have one for gaming. I show these in my class, and I had some customers that were learning more about games, and they were like, they were so excited. But anyway, let's kind of jump on and get into security. Security is really important, Aaron. It is very, very important. And
It's the top priority of AWS. Like security is the top priority.
yes, it is. Well, we've heard it over and over throughout our careers here at AWS that it's job one, right? It's the most important thing. And we need to look at security. I'm going to go ahead and share this link. And we can go ahead and, yeah, somebody put in there, not job one, job zero. Yeah, if we want to start ordinally, instead of numbering numerically, we want to start ordinally. We start from zero, so it is job zero. And it is very important for you to go ahead and look at security. Amazon puts in a bunch of different mechanisms and different layers throughout. I had someone in one of my classes, Aaron, and said, we do have security courses, but they wanted to know more about security. And I said that every one of our courses, it's integrated. So if you're talking about networking, we also cover security. If you're talking about databases, we talk about security. If you're talking anything in AWS, if you're talking about EC2 instances or Lambda, any compute power, we talk about security. And so there's a lot of aspects to security in everything we cover. And that should be number one in your way of walking through AWS.
That's the first thing I do. Whenever I'm logging into any system, I'm very conscious about security. I have my password that is not repeated across any system. I have my MFA, my multi-factor authentication token, and we'll talk more about that or some of that in today's episode. But if you want to know more about any of those, let us know. Type in the chat. We have people here to help.
Yes, yes. And so I'm going to actually start here. Remember last week, Aaron, one of the things we talked about was our regions, and AWS regions are located around the world. That's where we have our data centers, and that in a region, we have multiple availability zones. Do you remember that?
I do. I do remember that. Which link are you trying to share right now? So go ahead and grab
Yeah.
that link, put it into
Yeah, let me go ahead
the
and do that. Am I am I slowing us down here?
No, you're good. Not at all. I
Okay.
do remember that. So we have these regions and we have availability zones, and there are data centers in the availability zones. And right here, I think I'm looking at like a graphic of data centers where we have some infrastructure and security around that infrastructure. Is that what you're showing us right now?
Yeah, yeah. And so this is a great web page for people to say, well, what does the physical infrastructure of AWS look like? And how do we build security? So some of the things that we have with respect to security here, Aaron, as I scroll down, there are multiple layers. And so we have our perimeter layer, right? That's the physical security. We don't have a data center that's going to have a big AWS sign on it. It's a nondescript building that people, you probably drive by them all the time. You don't even know that AWS, that's an AWS data center. So things like security guards and fencing and security feeds and different security measures to make sure that only the authorized personnel are allowed to access that location. We also have the infrastructure layer, and that infrastructure layer talks about backup power equipment. Remember, we talked about that our availability zones are in different electrical grids. And so if, for example, the power goes out, we have the ability to go ahead and have backup power equipment, generators to run the data center. We have an HVAC system. Everyone knows that compute power gets really hot, right? You're running a lot. I have uh, a quick story. Long time in my career, they went ahead and installed some compute equipment. This is for another company I worked for, and they tested to make sure that they had an HVA system that ran during the weekend, so that in case the office building turned it off, Aaron, and we came in and it was 150 degrees
Oh my
in that
gosh,
room on a
that actually
Monday
happened.
morning. Yeah,
Jeez, that's terrible. I'm sorry.
and what happened? They tested it, and somebody had tripped a breaker, and so the HVA system was off. Now, thankfully, it didn't impact anything. We kept the door open, we got it turned on, and we got everything cooled off. But it's very important to keep your systems cool and also be aware of any fire suppression equipment. Right? If we have a fire in the data center, how are we going to go ahead and put that out? A lot of times we use inert gases. We're not going to pour water on there, right? We can damage the equipment
Gases.
around it.
I've set up systems in my past time when I was a network and systems administrator where we actually used foam. So there's
Oh,
gas to like deprive the oxygen in the room, and that puts the fire out. And there's also foam that is non-destructive to the equipment, so it covers it and then it protects the equipment from actually being burned. So there's that too.
yeah. And we also have the data layer, right? How are we protecting your data? Who has access to your data? You have access to your data. I don't have access as an AWS employee. Aaron doesn't have access to your data as an AWS employee. You have access to your data, and we're safeguarding. We have you write your data to the disk. We have a whole process when those disks are no longer used, how we destroy those disks so that no one else can get them. It's not like we just throw them out in the trash and somebody could rifle through the trash. No, we have a specific way that those are destroyed so that they don't fall in the hands of anybody. And we essentially destroy them, and that's regulated for compliance. And then we had the environmental layer. Where are we going to go ahead and put your data center so that we can mitigate any environmental risk like flooding or extreme weather or even seismic activity? So very important here.
Like earthquakes.
Yeah,
Wow,
like earthquakes.
cool.
The most important thing, and this comes up a lot when we talk about, is that security, Aaron, is a shared responsibility between AWS and the customer. Did we have a poll? Did we have a poll? Let's go back real quick. Didn't we have a poll for the data center? I know I'm
We
popping
do,
around.
yeah. Yeah, so we
You
have
want
a
to throw that
poll
up?
around certain categories that might fall under. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull that up. Give me a second here. And here we go. So everyone, use the chat, please do. Which of the following categories fall under security? Data protection, identity and access management, threat detection, or compliance, or maybe all of the above. Use the chat. You can type one, you can type two, you can type multiple options, you can type four if you want to. I see a lot of fives coming in. 55555. Also, a lot of first time chats. Okay, first time viewers, thank you very much for being here. Really do appreciate it. And while we're waiting for these response options to come up, if this is your first time here, welcome. This is AWS Power Hour Cloud Practitioner. My name's Aaron. My buddy Matt is down here helping us to learn more about cloud foundational and fundamental concepts. Today, we're talking about security and compliance. So, a lot of people are saying 55555. And Matt, should we go ahead and expose the correct answer here, or what we think is the correct answer?
I think so.
All right, let's go ahead and do it. So here, all of the above 5 is the correct answer because they're all categories that fall under security. Cool. Let's go ahead and move on, Matt.
Awesome. Well, we'll come back here. And we'll jump into the next section, and that shared responsibility model is very important. It's divided up into 2 sections, and I'm going to focus on the orange layer here. Can you see that all right, Aaron, or should I expand it a little more?
Well, you know what? It doesn't really matter what I think. I can see it, but I'm curious to know if everyone else can see it. How's the size, everyone? Is it's getting so big now. How's the size, everyone? Is that better for you? Can you see it just fine? And then we also see someone asking for the link for this. And don't worry, we'll get a link for you. I promise.
I think
All right.
Thomas threw it in the chat. If you could do that
One
again,
person said
Thomas, that'd be great.
huge. Huge.
Yeah.
It was so
All right.
huge.
So let's start the shared responsibility model. And so if we look at the bottom here, in orange, AWS is responsible for security of the cloud. Now, what do we mean? We mean regions. We mean availability zones. We mean edge locations. Remember, we talked about content delivery networks last week, and we'll talk about that later on. And we're in charge of all the hardware and the global infrastructure. We're keeping that safe. And we talked about data center, that perimeter security, that infrastructure security, that environmental security, that data protection that we just went over. And then the customer's responsible for what's in the cloud. What they create in the cloud, they're responsible for. So they're responsible for operating system, they're patching those network and firewall configurations, what ports you open and how you let traffic in and out. Everything in AWS starts with, it's entirely secure. And what I mean by that is when you create a user, for example, that user has no permissions, none. You, as the customer, have to assign those permissions. When you go ahead and create compute, we'll see next week, you have to open up the ports to allow communication in from the internet. So everything starts with it being secure, and you can decide how you want to go ahead and open things up, because we do have to open things up, don't we, Aaron? If we don't, how can we communicate, right?
I was on mute. I said, yes.
Okay, all right. All right, okay. So the shared responsibility model is very important. Make sure you spend some time reading and looking at this documentation. And let's kind of go on to look again at some additional things. We'll look here at security, identity, and compliance. So security takes on many different factors. We want to secure our workload. We also have identity. We will go ahead and create user accounts that allow people to gain access to our AWS infrastructure. And we want to give the concept there, and you're going to hear this over and over again, about least privilege. Give people the permissions they need to do what they need to do, and nothing else. Nothing else. I one time, Aaron, this is a long time ago, 20 some years ago, I'm teaching in a class and we're talking about security. And one of the guys says, you know what? I just give everybody at my company admin permission. And everybody looked and we said, why do you do that? You're opening up. He
Wild
said,
cards,
yeah, I don't
asterisks
have to.
everywhere.
Yeah, I don't have to do anything. He said, I don't worry about it. You know why? Because now they can do whatever they need to do. But what happens if that person doesn't know the right thing and they click? What happens?
I
We
feel
can
like there's
take
a
some.
meme for that where it's like asterisks everywhere. Asterisks are really dangerous in the wrong hands, definitely, because least privilege, it requires specific actions, specific calls, not asterisks. And you know what?
Yeah.
I see one question in the chat about explaining the difference between high availability versus reliability. For those who are new here, We do have last week's video on demand. You can go ahead and watch that. There's a link in the chat, and we covered that a couple times. And we'll go ahead and tie that into today's episode, but we're not going to spend time digging into the details. We encourage you to go watch the on demand episode. Okay, and let's go ahead and move on to maybe another poll, Matt, about the data layers. You mentioned a couple like perimeter and infrastructure and so forth. Is it okay
Yeah,
if we pull that up? Okay.
yeah,
So
that'd be great.
we talked about data protection, but it also comes back to infrastructure protection. So everyone, use the chat, please do. I'm hoping we'll see some bars happen today. This time, let us know which layer is the data center building and equipment and systems. Which layer does that fall under? Perimeter, infrastructure, data, or environmental? I don't see the bars happening, but I do see a lot of the numbers coming in. We'll figure this out. We're going to troubleshoot. Nothing like things happening live. I see a lot of twos, 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 twos. Not going to influence anything because I also see a one come in. So we're thinking perimeter or maybe infrastructure. Let's kind of read through this real quick. The perimeter layer is the data center building and the equipment and systems that keep it running. No, that's going to be the actual physical perimeter around the building itself. So it's not that. The infrastructure layer is the data center building and the equipment and systems that keep it running. That sounds a lot like infrastructure. The data layer is the data center building. No, that's the data within the data center. The environmental layer is the data center building. No, that's what helps run the data center. So let's go ahead and say maybe it's two. I see a lot of people who are thinking two. You are correct. So great job.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, let's go ahead and get back into looking at some of the more security. So one of the things I kind of want to jump in here, Aaron, is I want to talk about compliance. You know, if I go back to it talks about security, identity, and compliance. How do customers know that everything is secure? I mean, we have this website here, and it
Because we tell them.
shows. Right, we tell them, but
No?
you know what?
Okay.
Telling, yeah, but there's got to be a way to better earn trust with your customers. And that's one of the things that's very important to AWS is trust. And so we can come in and actually look at compliance. And so when you say, well, what is compliance? Compliance is that we have third-party organizations come in and they have standards, and they look at our data center, they look at our operations, they look at our security, and they go ahead and do an evaluation, and then they publish those findings, and they
So
rate
third
us.
party meaning they are not AWS employees. They are not Amazon employees, right?
Correct. This
Okay.
is a third party disinterested. Maybe is that the correct way to word it?
I'll take it. We'll
Not
we'll approve it for today, Matt. It's okay.
all right. Okay, all right. Maybe I'll get the thesaurus out, and we'll use that for next week.
But for now, disinterested.
Yeah, but one of the things that they can go ahead and do is they can go ahead and, as it says here, third-party validation for thousands of global requirements. Global. Remember, we're not just in one country. We are scattered throughout the globe, and each one of the countries that our regions and availability zones lie in have different requirements. And so we can go ahead and satisfy those requirements. And so you can read all kinds of different certifications. And so one of the things that I'd like is, first of all, is to have everyone go ahead and, I know this is, we have some other homework for you, but I'd really like everyone to read this risk and compliance paper. Okay, it is 16 pages. You can download the PDF. This is the latest revision for it, and it is very, very important to give you an understanding of that. Oh, did you see, we had someone say third-party independent attestation.
I
That's
did see
wow.
that. I did see
That
that.
is awesome. That is
You know what?
awesome. That is wow.
You know what
And
else I
so here's
saw?
the
One
link.
person was asking, let me see here. And right here. So we're talking about disaster recovery, risk and compliance and so forth. But what about our regions in Japan? So if you want, I can go ahead and take that one, or you can answer it.
I'll let you go ahead and take that, Aaron, while I
Okay.
take a drink.
Go ahead. So it's pretty early for you out there in Anaheim. For me in Frisco, Texas, it just hit 12 noon. So that means it's 10 o'clock in the morning for you, right?
Yes, I'm still caffeinating.
I'm still clearing my throat. It feels like the morning still. But for this question, how does AWS manage data centers in Japan, earthquakes, natural disasters that are very normal? That actually, we take environmental considerations into our region buildouts. And all of the same practices for each region will be applied to make sure that we have a high availability and durability and so forth. So, for example, with Amazon S3 is designed for 11 nines of durability. And with that, that means we have at least three availability zones in every single region, including Japan. So cool.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, definitely read this, and I'll be honest, Aaron, I read this once a year. And the reason is just to remind me of how important it is security. I know we had a lot of, fun last week, and we were laughing and joking, and we had a lot of bad jokes, but security is really it's important, and it is job one. And so I wanted to take a different tone in this week's presentation to make sure that we were gave the respect that we needed to for security. Next week it'll be crazy again. You just wait. Oh. So let's go. Let me jump back real quickly here. And one of the things I wanted to, besides reading that risk and compliance paper, what I'd like you to do also is it talks about compliance programs webpage, and I'm going to go ahead and click on that, and then I'll share it. And one of the things that is really interesting is all of the different compliance programs. And so we have the way we break the standards, the IT standards down, is there are certifications and attestations. Again, there's that word that we can have. We also, different countries have different laws and regulations and privacy requirements. One of the things that pops up is GDPR. Have you heard of that, Aaron?
There's HIPAA, PCI, GDPR, various different types of compliance that each company might need to take into account when they're working with their customer data. So in the United States, we don't have GDPR, but GDPR might affect you in the countries that you work in and operate out of.
Yeah, it's the GDPR is the Global Data Protection Regulation, and it has to do with personal information in Europe and how it is stored, how it is shared, how it is kept private, all of those regards. So you can come through here and look at all the different compliance regulations and offerings that we are satisfied, and you can do it by in global ones, you can do it by the Americas. Here we can come in, the Canadian Center for Cybersecurity, the Department of Defense Data Processing.
There's
Spend
one
some
person
time
here
here
saying
wherever you're at.
general, not global, right? So no, actually we
Oh,
do have
general, it
global
is.
compliance and we also have regional specific compliance as well. So take a look at this page, find out which compliant option might be right for you and your use case.
I think though what they're pointing out is I might have misspoke. And so I said, did I say global data protection regulation when I think it is general data protection regulation? So thank you to that for correcting me. Do we have any other polls coming up here, Aaron?
We do have one. Let me go ahead and pull this up. So, hey, everyone, hang out and stay tuned. We have one more poll. Security and compliance is a what between AWS and the customer? Is it the managed responsibility? Is it shared responsibility or compared responsibility? Shared responsibility? Or is it the answer is always 42 between AWS and the customer? I don't know about that last one. So, if anyone
I don't
says
know either.
four, then you are probably trolling us for sure. Our own moderators are even saying four. Stop it, please. Most people are saying 3. I see 3, 3, 3, 3, 3. Okay, I see also a lot of first-time chats from viewers. You know what that indicates to me? Maybe people join a little bit late. If this is your first time viewing, if you just tuned in, we are covering AWS Power Hour Cloud Practitioner. This is episode 2 of a 6-part series here live on Twitch, where you can speak to myself. My name is Aaron Hunter, or my buddy here, Matt. We also have chat moderators in the queue, and they are helping answer questions that we aren't able to get to live. We'll have a 30-minute Q&A session at the end of this, roughly in about 20 minutes. Okay, so stay tuned. All right, so for everyone who said 3, I'm going to go ahead and say you are correct. Let's pull that answer up. Security and compliance is a shared responsibility between AWS and the customer. Congrats, you got it
Awesome.
right.
Let's jump back into the looking at the different websites that I've kind of pulled up. And what I'd like to also here, by the way, is that compliance and paper that we've assigned for homework, one of your homeworks. Again, 16 pages. Good to get in the habit of reviewing this often. So what I want to shift the focus, Aaron, and when you create your own account. So first of all, let's go ahead and here we go. One of the things that we're going to talk about is the free tier. And so you can go ahead and gain free hands-on experience with AWS by creating an account. So some of the things that you can go ahead and do, we have free trials of different services. We have some of the services that we offer for free, and then we have some services that are always free. And so you can go ahead and look at the different details. So for example, when you create a free tier, you get 750 hours of EC2 per month, provided you're using things like Linux or Red Hat Linux and on T2 and T3
SUSE.
micro instances.
SUSE.
Yes.
Don't let the name confuse you. That's how I remember it. It's not
Okay.
SUSE. It's not SUSE. It's SUSE. That's
Okay.
from the company. What is it? There's like a specific instance type and size that you can use for that free tier, right?
Yes, the T2 micro or the T3 micro, and that provides enough CPU and memory for you to go ahead and play around with, and see and test. And we have a whole bunch of free things. I use a lot of T2 micro and T3 micro in my classes just to show students. And you can go ahead and download a web server, for example, and run that web server and connect to it. So different things that you
Yeah.
can do. We
And you
also
mentioned always free. So there's a question in the chat about, do always free resources work without any subscription or plan renewal? Can we bring up that list and maybe walk through one example of an always free resource?
Sure. How's this? Always free is example AWS Lambda, 1 million free requests a month, or DynamoDB, which is our NoSQL database, 25 gigabytes of storage is free.
And by always free, it doesn't mean that the service itself is always free, but there's no 1-year limit. So with the free
Yeah.
tier, typically it's going to be the first year for some usage over each month. So for in this case,
Oops.
Lambda, the first 1 million invocations each month are free. So go to the page, check it out, understand your use case, understand your overall total cost of ownership and so forth that you might have, and kind of play around. And last week we talked about free being my wake word, and you really perked my ears and got my attention when we started talking about the free tier. Thank you.
Yeah. Yep. But just be cautious, because when we assign the homework this week, we want to make sure that no one incurs any costs. Okay. And so there are a lot of warnings
Yeah,
there. And that's why I'm just setting everything up, because, right, we all want to work as a team here and give you the best experience. And we don't want you to go ahead and have and incur um, any costs.
we want to
So
help you. We want to help you
yes.
learn and be frugal at the same time.
Yes. So one of the things I want to talk about is an identity and access management. When you create your account, in the free tier, when you create your account in AWS, you have one user, and user is the super user, I'll pull up, right, is root. And then you have to go ahead and create additional users. And when you create those additional users, and then give them permissions to do things within your AWS environment. And this is identity and access management. So for example, if I had database administrators, I would have to create a database administrator account for each one of my database administrators. Maybe there's 4 on the team. And then I would have to go ahead and give them each permissions to go ahead and manage our databases within AWS. And so this is one of the first things that customers do as they're getting ready to come over to AWS, is creating those accounts. So I'm going to go ahead real quick here. I'm actually in my account, and I'm going to go ahead and create I'm going to come over here to users, and I'm going to create an account. I'm going to create a user account. And I figured this would be better to explore. Now I have 2 users here already, and I'm going to go ahead and add a user. How's everything look, Aaron?
To me, it looks good, but we also have one person saying, "Hey, create roles," and then, oh, not that one. Thomas is hijacking my thing here. Here we go. Create roles and assign users to the roles, and then give them permissions. We'll talk about that in just a few moments here. Good
We
call out.
will. We will. Good. Very good. So when I create a user, I'm just going to call this user test1. And I can add multiple users. Now, just to let you know, I could also script this and do this at the command line, but people are visual learners, so I like to show things through the GUI first. And as you go through your career, you can go ahead and look at different ways of doing this in terms of automating it. And then we have 2 types of credentials. We have access key, and what it does is it'll create an access key ID and a secret access key, and that is used for accessing over the command line interface or through a software development kit. So you can go ahead and access as needed. And just real quick here. Yep. Let's CMD. All right, here's a command
Ooh,
prompt.
there's one person saying or API, talking about the CLI or SDK. Actually,
Yeah,
all of this is just making an API call. It depends on
yes.
which method you're using. So, are we using the console, which is like a really pretty wrapper and a graphical user interface for us? Is it the CLI, which is command line based, or is it going to be through one of our SDKs, a software development kit? There's CDK, there's like CDK for Terraform, all that. I get it. I get it. By the way, CDKTF just got announced last week. If you're interested in knowing more about that, let us know. One of our chat moderators can throw a link in the chat. But they're all an API call.
Yeah.
Everything is just an API call.
Yep, great to point out. We also have the ability to go ahead and add a password. We can auto-generate a password. We can
And we
go
have the
ahead.
ability to zoom into the screen. I see one person asking for that.
We haven't. How's that look? A little better?
It's a little better. Yeah.
Sorry. How's that? So we can go
I,
ahead and put in that password. Is that better?
that's a lot better. Thank you.
And I apologize. Next week it'll be even better. I'm operating on one small laptop in a hotel room.
You're in a hotel room out of Anaheim because you just got done staffing the Anaheim Summit yesterday. Thank you for your service, sir. Thank you.
Yes. So next week I'll be back home, and I'll have multiple monitors, and I'll be surrounded by all that technology. So
You mean you don't have multiple monitors in the hotel room set up near you?
no, no, but I. And then I can choose whether I want to have that user create a new password at sign in. I'm not going to, as just demonstrating here. And then I'm not going to save this password. Now I can add the user to a group, but I'd have to create that group. A group is a way to organize user accounts, and those user accounts have all the same permissions. So I can drop a user in. So example, somebody could be a developer, and then they can be in the group.
We have
that for
someone who tuned in
developers.
last week. They're saying back to home and back to firefighting, volunteering.
Oh, yes. Thought I missed the big one
Oh,
the other day, but anyway,
they
yes.
they tuned in last week. We know that because they know you're a volunteer firefighter.
Yes. So anyway, a group, we can add people to the group. And so we could have the developers group. And so maybe they're for junior developers, they're just starting their career. And then we have the DevOps group. And those people have more permissions because they're more senior. And so we can go ahead and you can move a user when they get promoted from developers to DevOps. So I also have the choice of copying you from an existing user, or I can attach an existing policy directly. And Amazon, look at over here, we have 802 different policies. So we can go ahead and filter. We're going to talk about coming up S3 storage. And so if I type in S3, these are the different policies that already exist, and they're AWS managed. So I don't have to go ahead and create them, and I can go ahead and assign. So in this case, for example, I can give Amazon S3 read-only access to that particular user. And then I have the ability to give tags. So I could go ahead, and tags are key value pairs that allow us to include information about this particular user or any other things. I could give tags to all of my objects within AWS, and it's a great way to search and to manage. Tagging policies are very important, and we'll talk about that coming up as well. But I could
And hey,
say
we
that,
we just got done talking about users and groups and policies and so forth. And there's a question: can a user be in more than one group? Yes, they can.
yes, yes,
They
they
can
can.
actually be in up to 10 groups. So you can have one user as a member of up to 10 groups. Ideally, you are applying least privilege. Okay. And this way,
Yep.
if you have multiple groups and that user is a member of multiple groups, it makes it harder for you to troubleshoot or identify when there's a permission issue or too much permission. So even though one user can be a member of up to 10, still keep a pretty tight ship running on that one.
Yep. So I can come through, review, and then I can create that user. Now, here are some things that pop up. I can download the CSV. This is for accessing the API. And so they could come in and actually use this access key and secret access key. You can send an email to that user, and I can go ahead and send an email and send their password separately. So it
But
actually,
what if I forget to download the CSV right here? Is there any
oh,
option to recover the secret access key?
no, you have to recreate it. So you walk through the GUI again and just create a new one. I've had that happen in one of my prior roles at AWS. I managed some S3 buckets that were used by other users on different teams. And I would always create a user account to share, and I send them their access key and secret access key. But I can't tell you how many times people said, "Hey Matt, I never logged in, and it's been 3 months since I was supposed to log in, and can you send me that again?" Yes. So you have to recreate it.
Awesome. And then we talked about policies and so forth. There's another question in the chat asking which one is the right policy to select. I can't tell that for anyone. Do you have any recommendations?
Least privilege.
Least
Least
privilege. Yeah.
privilege. I could have given this user test one access to S3 and given them full access to S3. Remember, that was one of the choices, but I chose to do read only. And so it is a best practice throughout AWS to give least privilege. Just give people enough permissions to do the job they need to do and nothing more.
Yeah. And you know
Some
what? For everyone here, I'm going to go ahead and throw a question out there. We don't have this formulated. There's no poll for it, but I'm going to ask you. Should Matt apply a wildcard policy to this user? Go ahead and type yes or no in the chat and let's see what you think. And by wildcard policy, I mean allowing everything. I see some people saying no, one person saying yes, someone else is saying no. Um, yeah, a lot of people are saying no. A lot of people are saying no. Ideally, it's least privileged, no wildcard policies if you're able to avoid it. So
That's good. That's good. They're listening. Now, someone brought up roles, and roles are temporary credentials, and you can assign a role to a principal, and that principal could be a user, it could be a service. And you say, well, why would I give permissions to a service? If I had an EC2 instance, right, a virtual machine that needs to access Amazon S3, Aaron, how do you think I would do that?
A virtual machine that needs to access Amazon S3. So I'm going to go ahead and say we're probably talking about an Amazon EC2 instance here.
Yep.
And I would actually add it as a role, otherwise known as some kind of an identity. Okay. So within your EC2 instance, we'll talk about compute later on. You can add an IAM role to it. And this way, the EC2 instance has permissions to run those operations or run those APIs.
Yeah, because what would happen if we didn't use a role? What is the requirement? The requirement is that we would have to encode somewhere
Hmm.
in that EC2 instance a
Yeah.
username and password.
We would have my username and password on a post-it note stored and saved on that instance. So definitely don't want to do that.
Essentially,
Yeah,
essentially,
definitely don't want to
yes.
do that.
And we don't want to do that. We don't want to do that. And so, again, roles are very important. I usually, when I'm teaching at home, because I don't have it here, in a lot of our classes, we show a role with a hard hat. You know, you put that hat on, and that's that accessing that role just for a it's temporary. And now this EC2 instance can access this S3 bucket, or it can access this database. Um, and so
Yeah, and
roles are great to use.
so there's this concept of a user that has an access key and secret access key, and there's this concept of a role, which technically still from the system side has an access key and a secret access key. There's a question in the chat here. What's the major difference between an IAM user and a role? So an IAM user would be me, and then the role would be a hat. So I can
Yeah.
put a hat on and I can go out and do a specific role or task or function. I can change that hat to a different hat. And then now I'm a different role. But the one thing that I want to call out is short lived credentials.
Yeah.
A role has a token that expires after a given period of time. By default, that token expires after 1 hour. You can have the token expire after 36 hours or as short as 15 minutes. Now, when you start going down in the weeds of security, there's rule chaining, all that kind of stuff. If you want to know more about that, let us know. Let us know in the chat. We'll do what we can to answer it for you. We also have a Q&A session coming up in about 15 minutes, so stay tuned.
I also think a great way to think about roles, Aaron, is look at your own life. My role at AWS is I'm a senior technical trainer, just like you. My role at home is I'm a husband, right? My role at the firehouse is I'm a volunteer firefighter. And so I assume those different roles when I go do different things. And that's the same thing that you're doing within AWS. Is that a good
All right, so
analogy?
it's great. I love it. And you know what? I think we have one more poll. Let's see if we can bring this up and use some knowledge retention here because we talked about it a little while ago, but I'm going to pull it up. Hey, everyone, use the chat and let us know what you think the answer is to this. AWS regularly achieves third party validation for thousands of global compliance requirements that we continually monitor to help you meet security and compliance standards for finance, retail, healthcare, government, and beyond. Is this true or false? I see true, one coming in, a lot of trues. You know what, Matt? You're making a great impression because people are remembering what you're saying. And the answer here is true.
Awesome.
Okay. So, Matt, we just talked about a whole lot of stuff about users and roles, and you created a user, but what's the best way for us to maybe audit who did what in our account?
Yes, it is. And let's jump back in. I'm going to add the stream, and let's come back in and let's talk about. We've got two quick topics, and the first one is Cloud Trail. And you know how a trail can go through the woods or through the mountains or whatever, and you follow that trail. Cloud Trail is a service that keeps track of everything and what it tells what's going on in your account, and it tells you who, what, when, and where. what somebody did. So that user account, now you can see what Matt did. You can see what Aaron did. I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with what they did, but it's a way to go in and see what's happening in your environment. And
I don't know.
CloudTrail is a great way to do that.
I'm human, Matt. I make mistakes. Things happen.
I do too. I do too. We won't go into those here. All right. But I can tell you a lot. I can tell you that I've made mistakes, and that's how you learn as well. And so one of the things we also have is Cloud Watch, and so Cloud Watch keeps track. It's for monitoring and observability. Monitoring. This is really important. If you think about it, monitoring. This is like the dashboard of your car. You're looking at the dashboard of your car and how fast are you going? What are the mechanical features that are going on in your car? Whether you an EV, is there enough electricity? Or if you're using gas, is there enough gas? Is there enough oil? What's the oil pressure like? Those are different ways. Observability takes it one step beyond. Why is this happening? And so we can use CloudWatch and create dashboards to see what's happening in our environment. And what are we looking in terms of our AWS environment? Well, what about a service? What about an EC2 instance, a virtual machine that's running an application? Are users able to access that application, or are they complaining that there's some latency? And if there's latency, why? Observability takes it beyond just being able to see that there's a problem, and it says why. What is the cause of that problem, and why is that happening, and how can we solve it? So it could be a network issue. It could be that we didn't size the instance correctly. We don't have enough CPU. We don't have enough memory for that application. And so we can tune it. Observability allows us to tune. So CloudTrail tells us what happened in our environment. CloudWatch tells us how we can go ahead and improve performance. And there are
Yeah, I
people
like to
who,
think of CloudTrail as being my audit trail, and CloudWatch is my ability to watch what happened and create dashboards, like you mentioned. So the best way to kind of differentiate those is CloudTrail, audit trail, who did what from when and where. We can't answer why for you. What, Matt?
yes,
Why did you terminate my EC2 instance? I really don't get it. We can't tell you
why,
that, but we can give you the details so you can go ask Matt.
but I can tell you why I'm updating my resume. Um,
And then CloudWatch is to identify maybe from like a metrics driven percentage or perspective when that instance was terminated, or maybe CPU utilization or network in, network out utilization. Now, Matt,
Oop,
I muted
did-
myself. We just
okay.
talked about CPU and network in, network out. What about memory with CloudWatch? Is that a standard
Ah,
metric?
it is not a standard metric, it's a custom metric. And we'd have to go in depth, but when a virtual machine, which runs on a physical piece of hardware, starts up, the hypervisor, that manages multiple virtual machines, gives that virtual machine all the memory that it needs, that you configured. And that is so we don't show that metric. It'll show that it's using all the memory, when in reality it isn't, because there's a layer between it. And so you have to set a custom metric to set that up. So CPU, network, and storage IO, input output, are all standard metrics. Memory is a custom metric. One other thing, Aaron, so I struggled when I first started learning Amazon, and I kept confusing CloudWatch and CloudTrail, right? And one of the things that CloudTrail allows you to do is it looks at API calls from users. And so I remembered it by AI. That CloudTrail has AI, and that's API. I know it sounds crazy, but I've told people that, and CloudWatch doesn't, and I was able to finally distinguish between the two. So it was a little way for me to remember when I was, taking the exam or preparing for the exam to
The struggle is
differentiate between
real.
the two. Yeah.
The struggle is real for sure. All
Eh,
right.
all right. What I want to do is I'd like to get into the homework. And so I'm going to go ahead and pop this homework into the chat. Oops. And so here is it's a workshop, and this workshop is actually a 100 level, right? Entry level, foundational level way to go ahead and look at. Let me add to stream. Sorry about that, Aaron.
It's all right. I'm
All
over here
right, all
laughing
right.
on mute. It's fine.
You're laughing. Thanks a lot. Okay,
Let's go ahead and
so
pull
here.
up. So while Matt's doing that, he's getting all the links ready on his end, sharing and unsharing the homework, and he's adding links into the chat. Don't worry. The homework is to review the AWS Security Baseline workshop that we're going to walk through in just a few moments. Once you're done, share something new that you learned from this workshop on LinkedIn. You can tag us using the hashtag AWS Power Hour. You can tag myself, Aaron S. Hunter, and Matt with his beautifully shortened alias of MHFA. But Matt, whenever you're ready, go ahead and take back over. Let's walk through that homework for everyone. And hey, if you're excited for homework, type homework in the chat for us, please. Let's go ahead
All
and
right.
kick it off.
There we go. I've added it to the stream. Thanks, Aaron. I promise, multiple monitors are so much better. Oh, so let's go ahead. Here we go. You've got homework. Yes. And so the link uh, is 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 from one of our workshops. So as you progress in your career, come back to this catalog of workshops. There are a whole host of different workshops that you can do. They're set up for 100 level, foundational, 200 level, associate level, and then 300 level, which is the professional certifications. And you can go ahead and work on your account. But first of all, you're going to spend some time looking at that well-architected framework and looking at the shared responsibility model. And so you can scroll down and you'll come in here and it'll talk about securing your AWS account. So you're going to create that account in the free tier, and it's going to take you about 3 to 4 hours to complete, depending upon your familiarity with the console. But you're going to go ahead and do things like set account level contacts for a valid email. You'll restrict the use of that root user. Remember, I told you earlier that root user is your first account that you create. It's the super user. That's wonderful. But then go ahead and don't use that account. And why? Why do we do that, Aaron? Why would we not use the root account?
Because it's very dangerous. So the account root user is actually not one that you create. It's the user that's created for you when you create your account. It's unrestricted. There are some exceptions using organizations, but for now, just generically speaking, know that it's one of the most dangerous accounts in your account. The users in your account. But Matt, did you know there are actually 10 tasks that require the root user?
Oh, no.
Yeah, so one of them is like maybe changing our seller account, maybe signing up for GovCloud. Let's say deleting an S3 bucket policy that requires a VPC endpoint. You can only do that from the root account user. So there are certain tasks, and you know what? Hey, everyone, you've been asking for links. Let me go ahead and do you a huge favor. I'm going to get you a link. So tasks that require root user credentials. I have my chat here somewhere. Let me find my cursor first. And there you go. There's a link in the chat. Tasks that require root user credentials. There are 10 of them. Generically speaking, though, or just generally, not generically, generally speaking, don't use it. If you can, use an IAM user that has least privilege, or assume a role, or federate using an assume a role that way.
I think it's very important to understand in terms of the root user, also from a CloudTrail perspective, root did this. When you look into the who did something and look at an audit trail, it's not Matt did something or Aaron did something, it's root. Well, who was running as root when that was done?
What about Groot? Have a user named Groot, and then you can see the Groot did something. There's
Yes. All right. All
that.
right. So homework. This I want you to walk through this. It talks about most of the controls are free to implement. Please be careful. This guard duty, this section 11 here, guard duty. It gives you 30 days free of guard duty. And so if you don't turn it off in 30 days, then you will incur charges. So as you walk through each one of these sections, please be aware of look at the cost. And this one, which is setting your account level contacts to a valid email distribution list, is free. And it walks you through and has all the instructions.
Hi, my name is Aaron. You've triggered my wake word, free. How can I help you?
Yes. So anyway, we've shared the link and you can go through. Now, one of the things that I want to point out here is you may not have unused VPCs if you just created. You may not have unused subnets or security groups. We're going to cover networking next week. So this is a great way to get you to come back because we're going to talk about that. But remember, security is a frame of mind. Security is a thought process that you need to always be aware of when you're dealing with technology and when you're dealing with AWS. And so getting you to go through and look at this, some of them you may not have to take any action, but it's to get you to think about different ways as we walk through the next 4 weeks, how to make sure that your environment is as secure as possible. So I'll kind of end
There's a
there.
dad joke alert in there. It says, I saw a snake that was 3.14 meters long. I think it was a python. Oh, that's terrible. Pi. You see that?
Yeah, I'm
That's actually going in my database.
okay.
And everyone, we've digressed over to Q&A. Welcome to the Q&A
Yeah.
session of AWS Power Hour Cloud Practitioner episode 2. Type your questions in the chat. We'll do whatever we can to answer them in the next 20 minutes. But yeah, I give up, Matt. I give up.
Mic drop.
Well, Woodrow's asking, what do you do when you drop your laptop? I have no idea.
What? Is this
I don't
another
know.
bad joke?
It seems like it's something that's kind
Setting
of
you
leading
up.
up to that. Yeah. But someone picked it up so good. Database. They got it. You know what I'm talking about. You know what I'm talking about. All right. Anyway, what is the exam discount voucher you were talking about? Matt, I think you had that one pulled up. Do you want to cover that? If not, I can do it.
I don't have that pulled up. Are you okay to do that, Aaron?
Yeah, not a problem at all.
It's a challenge, right? It's our Cloud Practitioner challenge. We want to get more people certified. And so it allows you to go ahead and get a discount if you register with AWS.
Yeah.
So
So I have it pulled up here on the screen. There's a link to this page in the chat. The link that's in the chat can take you to all the resources, which includes last week's on-demand video. I'll scroll down here. I'm not dancing around your question. I'll get to it, I promise. So the link that's in the chat can take you to the episode list, where you can see a link for last week's on-demand episode. You can see today's episode, the one that we're currently in. And then also starting in the next day or two, we're going to have a link to the on-demand version as well. And you can see all future episodes, the dates, the topics, and so forth. And we can go up here. This episode, well, the entire series is part of the Get Certified Challenge. So I will open that in a new tab. And once that loads, then we'll see. And I'm not going to share this link in the chat just because you can get to it from the link that I already shared. So I don't want to have too many links floating around the chat there. But Get Certified Cloud Practitioner Challenge. And we can see on this, you can join the challenge. You can enter your information. It takes about a week or so to get your code. So be aware of that. But if you scroll all the way down, you'll see a whole lot of, here we are, how to get started, how to start, and some FAQs. So, how do I get the 50% off exam voucher for the AWS Certified Cloud Practitioner exam? We have an answer for you. So, basically, read through this, read through the FAQs, find out which ones are important to you. But effectively, you have until September 30th to join the challenge and access your exam voucher. And then your exam appointment words. Your exam appointment can be any day before December 14th, 2022. All right. Let's see if there's any other questions out there. Do any stand out to you, Matt?
Uh,
And while you're looking through that, I'll pull
we had
this one
one.
up.
Yeah, that was the one I was going to focus on. So I'll
Go
let you
for it.
answer that, Aaron. How long do the class videos stay online before they're taken off?
So the videos will be up for, I actually don't even know. I don't know the answer to that, but I do know they're up for a while. Okay. So the videos will be available on demand at least until the end of the certification challenge. But if you go back and take a look at the page, I'll pull it up one more time. Let's test it out. Okay. Let's test it out. So on this page, and if we go all the way down here, we can see watch on demand. And if we go to, give me a second here, awspowerhour.com, that'll pull up our AWS training and certification page on Twitch. Okay. And I'm going to find one that I know is pretty old. I'm pretty
Okay.
sure it's like a year or two old. Um, July 2021, that's over a year. So let's open that one in a new tab. We're going to take a look and see. Power Hour Architecting, Resilient Architectures, Watch on Demand, Twitch episode with Chinmay. We have Adam and Eric. Let's go ahead and just open up this first one. We're going to Twitchception. Stand by. Bear with us, everyone. Bear with us. But here we can see that this link does load. It does pull up. So you can watch episodes as late as last year. I think we have episodes from late 2020 as well. So it'll be there for a little while. Rest assured that you can still access that page and access the links and resources that you need to study and be successful.
And we also had a question: do we need to do they need to schedule the exam between before the September 30th? And what they need to do is register for the challenge before September 30th and take the exam by December 14th.
Correct. 2022.
Yep. 2022. Yep.
Just to make sure
So
you're watching this way in the future. We're being clear,
yeah.
it's 2022. Okay.
Yeah. We had, looks like Woodrow answered the question. Somebody asked about what an AWS organization is. And if you have multiple accounts, say a company created multiple AWS accounts, one for development, one for production, just as a simple example, you can, AWS organizations allows you to manage multiple accounts, because you would get two bills, one from production and one from development, every month. And so one of the ways is AWS organizations sends the combined bills for those accounts. And so when you have 20, 30, 40 accounts, it's much easier to go ahead and manage with AWS organizations.
Awesome. Ooh, here's one. This is a little bit deeper than the cloud practitioner certification, but how do you test a disaster recovery plan? What do you think, Matt?
I think there are a lot of different ways that you can. I think one of the convenient things is that AWS allows you to create, I could create my account in Oregon, or I have my account, I can create my infrastructure in Oregon, and then I can go ahead and create a similar infrastructure in, let's say, US East. or another region, wherever, and then I could go ahead and deploy it. I can tell you from experience as an admin, when we had data centers, we had to find that extra hardware to go ahead and see if our disaster recovery failed
Yeah.
over, and was that part of the budget or in that. And so AWS lets us go ahead and test those types of scenarios much easier than we did in the old data center days.
Yeah, there's services like Fault Injection Simulator and stuff like that. One thing that I can say is if you want to test your disaster recovery, we'll talk about networking next week, but you can take a network ACL, a network access control list, and you can effectively stop traffic from entering your entire subnet. So that could force traffic, force a failover to another region if you have it set up that way. We'll talk more about networking later next week. So tune in next week for more. Come back to us.
Yes. Awesome.
All right.
Uh,
Let's go ahead and see if there are any other questions. Is there any way that they can reach out to us outside of the class if they have any questions about anything taught in the class? We do have our LinkedIn aliases. You can send us messages there, but I can't say whether or not we'll be able to answer questions that are asked. But feel free to connect with us. Let me go ahead and pull that back up. It is as part of the homework. Actually, it's a really good time for us to pull up our homework one more time as a reminder for each of you. We have homework for this week. Review the AWS Security Baseline Workshop. Share something new that you learned from the workshop on LinkedIn and tag us. So tag hashtag AWS Power Hour. My name or my alias is Aaron S. Hunter. It's on LinkedIn. That's also the same alias on Twitter if you want to follow me there. And Matt is MH Hefe. That's brand new as of this week.
yes.
All right.
We still have some people mentioning about the redeeming the voucher before September 30th. You have to register for the challenge by September 30th, and then you have to take the exam by December 14th of 2022. And that's when you schedule the exam is when you redeem the voucher. So you don't have to schedule the exam by September 30th. You can go ahead and schedule it when you're ready. So,
Yep. And all of these FAQs, all of these questions are also added as FAQs in the bottom of our Get Certified Cloud Practitioner Challenge, which there's a link that I just pasted in the chat. So feel free to go to this page, read the FAQs. It'll probably answer some of your questions. Okay. Um, Please make sure to register for the challenge. Do it. Challenge yourself. Set a date. You can always reschedule it if you're able to. Don't forget to reschedule it. I've done that before. There's no undoing that. Once you miss it, then you miss it.
but I
Don't
think
pass that date.
I think your set a date is very important. I can't tell you how many times I said, "Well, yeah, I'm going to take this certification exam and I don't set a date." And when you don't set a date, then you push it off, right? And then that weekend that you were going to study, well, I'll go
Push
out
it
with
back.
friends or
Push
go
it
do
back. Push
something
it
else,
back.
and you keep
Yeah.
pushing it back. Set a hard and fast date. Um, and I had a manager who made us do that. He would say, "Well, when you get in this certification?" What do you mean when? I'm going to get it in 2021. No, you're going to get it by this date. Tell me. And it's interesting because because I had a few times that I scheduled at the last second and I couldn't get an exam, so it was like a week later, and he wasn't upset. he said yeah, procrastination. He said I just do that to make sure that you actually do it. And I thought that was great, and I really helped me in my career. So,
It's a
yeah,
great strategy for sure. It's one that I encourage everyone to do.
and
Cool.
I think Woodrow's comment: "Don't let the perfect be the enemy of the good. Just do it." Yeah, yeah. You could. Am I ready? Am I ready? Am I ready? You can do. Just go do it, and no matter what happens, you'll learn.
All right. Cool. Any other questions that stand out to you? Otherwise, I'm keeping a pretty close eye here on time.
Okay. Nothing else.
Okay. All right, everyone. Hey, so thanks for tuning in to episode 2 of AWS Power Hour Cloud Practitioner. Don't forget, we have homework for you. There's a link in the chat. We'll get that added one more time, Matt, if you don't mind dropping that in. So review the AWS Security Baseline homework, or workshop, rather. Don't review the homework. Do the homework. Review the AWS Security Baseline workshop. Share something new that you learned from this workshop on LinkedIn. Tag us using hashtag AWS Power Hour. Tag myself, Aaron S. Hunter, tag Matt, MH Hefe, and we'll see you next week on Tuesday, or sorry, not Tuesday, wrong date. Friday, August 26th at 9:30 a.m. Pacific time, where we will cover network and compute services. And thank you so much for being here. Thank you for attending the show. And Matt, thanks for being a wonderful host with me.
Well, thank you, Aaron. I'm glad you invited me, and I enjoy doing this every week with you. So thank you.
Likewise, buddy. All right, everyone. We'll see you next week. Take care.